Ave Maria Stella, Dei Mater Alma.
Hey, welcome back, North Carolina. Steve Cunningham with Sensus Fidelium, coming at you with the Sensus Fidelium Hour. And this week I want to bring up, I guess you could say, try to lessen the anxiety of people out there. To show that this is not the first time the church has been through rough waters, in a sense. That it's really, if you just want to tack on 24/7 news coverage, social media, blogging, things like that, if you would have seen this in the past, imagine what the response would have been then if you had the tech today. So start out with some ideas like pray, hope, don't worry. It's a great bumper sticker line. Some guy named St. Pio came up with said that phrase. But do we really believe it? I mean, pray, hope, don't worry. You tell everyone and their brothers, probably told their friend, pray, hope, don't worry, when they've had some kind of anxiety on this. But do we practice it ourselves? I know people for a fact that have said that to others. Hey, pray, hope, don't worry. Literally later on, they're worrying about something, and it's like, hey, do you take your own advice? Do you know what you say to others? I mean, again, we as Catholics, we're not supposed to just say things and not practice it. When we ask for patience, there was that great clip in Bruce Almighty when the wife talks to Morgan Freeman, who's playing God, even though he actually does think he is God in the real world. That she's begging for patience. She wants to become more patient. He says something to the point of sometimes maybe you get stuff to practice to become better at it. It just doesn't. God isn't a Coke machine that you go, hey, let me hit patience, and boop, pop, it pops out. Just like working out or sports. That's why I get into the idea of most people that are upset, and especially my own trad movement, and I get really flustered and are easy to trigger and things like that. I get mad about anything. Sometimes I wonder if they ever played sports or was in the military before, because if you were, you know that nothing is always handed to you, unless you're the coach's son or something like that, or you're I remember a guy I was behind in high school, and my first one in Broome High School. His dad did the scorebook, ran the concession stands, gave money to drive the bus and things like that, and I was the guy behind him. So guess whose kid was playing? And it was one of those things that I transferred the next day after I started, because coach goes, who's the best person? Whoever has the best practice starts the next day. And the next game, it's me, and 30 seconds into it, 6-0 me, and I get benched. I transfer the next day. So I'm done with this. Anyways, how many of us could sit there and take the heat from a coach and not get flustered? Because if you take heat from the coach, then it triggers you and you get worse. Kind of like a snowball effect. It just gets worse and worse, and just kind of the problems build up and build up and build up, instead of taking that advice and hammering through it and making it better. Iron sharpens iron, in a sense, instead of iron taking down butter. And you got to have some thick skin to play ball. You have to have some thick skin to get through hecklers in the stands, because you can hear them. I remember hearing when I pitched and played ball, people mock, laugh, they talk junk to you, and you're supposed to do everything you can to ignore it. Because right when you acknowledge that they exist, they got you. They know you're under the skin. Now, there was times when I would talk it, and I knew I could do it just because it was kind of like White Men Can't Jump. And there's a scene when Billy Ho is just talking mad smack, but he's playing well. And Wesley Snipes' character comes up to him and goes, what are you doing, man? He goes, I'm making them angry. I'm getting them mad. I'm focused. I'm getting them unfocused. And that's exactly it. Are you able to stay focused when things get bad? Are you able to concentrate on what you're supposed to do, the target, your aim? So like if someone's talked smack to me in there, I know that I got it. I'm in their head. You got this little skinny white dude who's taken to them. I remember I had the refs yelling at me one, talking smack. It was a 3-on-3 tournament. I'll never forget it. It was at a Westgate Mall parking lot, and I was just killing everyone. I had my team. I got a guy that could rebound and another guy that could pass it to me, and then it was great. But I even had the refs going at it. But that's when you know you're under their skin. But as Catholics, we We shouldn't let the Pope get under our skin. We shouldn't let bad things get under his skin. Plus, on top of that, do you know the translation is fantastic? Do you know that the contents are getting taken out of context or not? Do you know 100% that it's infallible, not speaking? Because if the church teaches is the Pope is only infallible under the certain conditions of faith and morals and speaking on behalf of the church. Guess what? Airplane interviews do not count as that. Interviews in Kazakhstan or interviews at Assisi do not count as that. Him just speaking off the cuff doesn't make. Just a couple weeks ago, he talks about getting rid of oil and gas. That's not an infallible statement. So you got to be able to know when it is and when it isn't. One, two. It's that whole. And on top of that, there's some guys running around saying, "Oh, these hyper-papalists." You know who true hyper-papalists are? Those that can't stop talking about the Pope 24/7. That are basically making their living off talking about the Pope 24/7. That are basically grifting and getting more people to click their blogs and click their links for videos because that's all they talk about is the Pope, the Pope, the Pope, the Pope, the Pope, the Pope. It's ad nauseum. It's sexy. It gets people to listen because people like hearing the negativity. All of us like the drama. It's just why the news leads off with, if it bleeds, it leads. You don't want if the news comes out with something, hey, a kitty got saved from the tree, nobody cares. But if it talks about, here's look at this bombing that happened, your eyes are glued. Fear, anger, all these emotions get trickled down to make you captivated into watching and listening more. Back in the day, before the internet, before wide travel, some people, especially like in the bush, just think about it. People in the bush in Africa, do you think they would know who the Pope was? There was people back in the day that didn't know who the Pope was for years. There's that story of Saint Juliana and the apparition for Corpus Christi. How that got? If you know the story, the moon and that little sliver of the moon was gone. And fast forward a little bit, Innocent III appears to her and tells please pray for me. I'm in purgatory for 3 sins. They don't mention what it is, but I've been in purgatory for a very long time because of it. And no one knew that he had just died. It took years afterwards to then find out, he really did die. They didn't believe it at first. So imagine the Pope getting elected. You're in North or South America. The Pope's across the great big pond in another country. And the news doesn't travel the speed of thought anymore. Well, speed of whatever the internet is. You don't have internet. You're in the bush in Peru, and the Pope gets elected. You still think it might be the Pope before. You didn't know he died. Much less get elected. Much less know exactly what he's talking about 24/7. So people if you don't even know who the Pope was back then, do you think you would get the instant thing, oh, the Pope said something bad today. The Pope was off the cuff. The Pope said something that could be quasi-heretical. The Pope said something that's really just dumb, mad, evil. I tell people all the time, hey, you ever heard of the line, isn't it great to profit off the superstitions of this religion? And it's people that come up and get angry at what's going on. And they was like, no, I have no idea who that is. I go, that's Pope Leo X. Approved Pope, still approved Pope, and approved Pope then. What do you think if that was the case with Pope Francis right now? What would you think people would do if you heard that? They would lose their minds. I'm going to get into more of that in the next section about some historical events that came on that would be like, what? I've had people come up to me just blowing their minds out, just upset. And then I tell them to relate these stories to them, and they go, I never knew this. Part of me likes the idea, the whole Cardinal Newman line of ignorance of scriptures, not ignorance of scriptures, ignorance of Christ. That's Jerome. To be deep in history is to cease being Protestant. John Henry Newman. I would also say to be deep in history is to cease being anxious over the problems in the church, because then you think, oh, what? People go up, there's a crisis in the church. There's always been a crisis. There's a book by Philip Hughes, Monsignor Philip Hughes, called Crisis in the Church. It made me, and a buddy of mine, Dr. Alan Finister, I think he's he used to be in the Denver seminary. I think he's up in the Northeast now. But him and I, you go to the Sensus Fidelium channel, look in the playlist, look at the councils of the church. We did a series on the councils of the church, which is based on that book. He uses that in his apologetic classes. Why? Because people don't know what the councils of the church are. One, why they even have it. So in the book, it leads up all these problems that are coming up And the councils were called to address these problems and correct these problems. So you don't have a council if just people they didn't get together. You know what? I need to meet up with the bishops in Toledo, or we need to get all the bishops in Africa to come by. Just to say hi and have some cocoa and donuts or whatever, croissants or things like that. No, there was a reason behind why they had these councils. So get that book and read it. Go, wow, there were some really messed up things that were going on during these days, during these times. Trust me, there are some messed up events. Again, I'll get into that in the next segment that went on, and you would go, wow, if MSNBC or NBC, CBS, if they were around then, what do you think the coverage would be? Do you think LifeSite News would be covered like this? Do you think Bratticelli would be all over? There's some stories in here that will be, and even Garanger brings it up. And I'll tell you a couple of those that happened. One was 10 days ago, the write-up on St. Bridget. As I've told a historian that one, he goes, wow, that gives a little bit more perspective on what the problems were back then that you don't see right now. Even John Henry Newman, his book on Arianism, talks about Catholics being pulled out and killed in the streets. I don't see that happening right now. It goes back to the people that thought like Thomas More, everyone thought that like Luther was the Antichrist, or everyone thought that their time was the end times. Their time was the Antichrist was there with them. And everyone thinks it's always the worst when they live. You hear that in secular ways. Basketball, this is the greatest player ever. This is the greatest player, this greatest team ever. You can't compare these in different generations because you can't play them together. You can't go back and say that. It's kind of like this is the greatest country in the world. What country? You in Italy? You in France? You in you in South Carolina? In the Union of the United States? How do you compare who's the greatest unless you go to all of them and in every history of time in history, etc. So in the next segment, let's talk about some of the weird and terrible events that you might not know of.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. John Aquaviva, host of Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. We were recently blessed to have on the show PGA great and Charlottean Webb Simpson. Here's his response on staying faithful while on the tour.
It's a great lifestyle. I'm so thankful for it. There's amazing perks about it, but it's also a hard lifestyle. I mean, I think most people look at it and they see, oh, he's traveling to the great cities of the United States and playing the best golf courses against the best players, and that's great and that's true. But saying bye to 5 kids and a wife you love every other Tuesday is really hard. Yeah. And, you know, there's some great things about it, right? Where my wife and I talk all the time when I'm away from them and I am sad and I miss them, all that does is push me closer to Christ. I move closer to him. I'm more dependent on him. Yep. I need him. And my wife says the same at home. It's a lot harder for her, but she knows I'm doing what the Lord has, given me the opportunity to do at least 1 year at a time. It's been tough, but it's fun.
So please join us for great guests like pro golfer Webb Simpson on Faith in Sport, heard daily here on Carolina Catholic Radio.
Hi everyone, it's Jason Murphy for the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas and the Obligation Radio Show here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. Registration is now open for the 13th Annual Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas to be held on March 18th, 2023 at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church. It's going to be an amazing day of faith, fellowship, and prayer. Of course, we'll be joined as always by our own Bishop Peter Jugas of the Diocese of Charlotte. We also have a great lineup of speakers, including Charles Frawny. Charles is the author of Slaying Dragons, What Exorcists See and What We Should Know. He's going to be there to discuss spiritual warfare. Also joining us, Jonathan Fanning. He is an author, speaker, an entrepreneur, and a father. Coming to us from High Point, North Carolina, the Diocese of Charlotte, is Deacon John Clark. Deacon is a former NYPD SWAT officer and former MMA fighter. You won't want to miss this one. Scott Weeman is going to be another one of our speakers. He is with Catholic in Recovery. He's going to talk to us about addiction and recovery for Catholics. And our MC this year will be Kevin Spalding. Kevin is a speaker, an author, and business life coach. You can go online now to www.catholicmenofthecarolinas.org. Make sure to use the promo code RADIO and save $5. We look forward to seeing you there on this awesome day full of faith, fellowship, and prayer. For the Catholic Men's Conference Carolinas, the Obligation Radio Show, my name is Jason Murphy. God bless and Esto Vir.
Welcome back. Steve Cunningham with Sensus Fidelium Hour and with sensusfidelium.com, the YouTube channel, and soon to be name changed, sensusfidelium.tv right now. We're changing the name because it's under my name, under the brand, so people think they're working underneath me, and I'm not. I don't even control who comes on. I just tell people about it. And I don't want the problem of somebody coming on that I don't agree with or ain't approving of, and it's under my name. So we're changing that. They're rebranding it, I guess is the right way. Anyways, let's get to some problems in the history of the church that you might not be aware of. This list is not exhausted, right? But now this is the Cadaver Synod. This is Pope Formosus and Stephen VI. This is Pope Formosus. He's dead. He was the Pope prior to Stephen VI. Stephen VI dug up the Pope previous. Do we have the year? I can't remember the year. This is 1870 was when that happened. It was the painting. But I can't remember what year it is. Look it up on when Pope Stephen VI was around. So he digs up Formosus. That's already a scandal already. And basically condemns him to the fifth realm of hell. Cuts off his fingers, throws him in the Tiber, and declares everyone that he's ordained to be basically laicized. They basically laicized everybody, that their ordinations were not valid. Fast forward a little bit, the next pope comes in and reneges on Stephen VI's dictate. They bring the pope back up, give him a great burial again, restore him to okayism, I guess you say, make him okay again. Restore everyone that got laicized, restore their faculties back. And the next pope comes in, reneges that. The next pope comes in and reneges the reneging. So you're going, as one priest says, Johnny Sixpack is looking around going, what in the wild world of sports is going on here? Is my marriage valid? Is my baptism valid? Is my confirmation, is my confessions valid? Is my grandma, did my grandma get a Rorate Mass? Or, not Rorate Mass, a Requiem Mass. Little Johnny Sixpack has no idea what's going on. Imagine that story. And I'm simplifying everything that went down during it. Just think about that in the world today, in 2022. Think about if Francis dug up JP2, put him on trial, cut off his fingers, and threw him in the Tiber. Just imagine what would be the outcry, not just the media, but Catholics in general. So there was no 24/7 internet at the time. People would lose it if that happened in 2022. Just gives you a little perspective on again. Imagine digging up the Pope. Again, that'd be like digging up JP2 and put him on trial, throwing him in the Tiber, cutting off his fingers, and taking away all the faculties of people that he ordained afterwards. Think about that one. Now, Frank Sheed had a... what else? Oh, I mentioned about St. Bridget. Bridget, I'll get the exact quote up for it. This is from Don Prosper Garanger. Let's see. Meanwhile, in Rome, widowed of her pontiff, this is when the Avignon popes came out. They all left Rome to go to Avignon, France. Widowed of her pontiff appeared the most miserable of cities. The ways of Zion mourn, because there are none that come to the solemn feast. Garanger writes, sacked by her own sons, she was daily losing some remnant of her ancient glory. Her public roads were scenes of bloodshed. Solitude reigned amid the ruins of her crumbling basilicas. Sheep grazed in St. Peter's and the Lateran. From the Seven Hills, anarchy had spread throughout Italy. transforming the towns into haunts of brigands and the country parts into deserts. France was doomed to expiate in the horrors of the 100 Years' War the captivity of the Roman pontiff. Imagine Rome. Imagine today if there were sheep grazing in St. Peter's or the Lateran Basilica. Again, just try to do a mental practice on that one. What would the outcry be if you saw sheep gathering? If Pope Francis brought sheep in to graze in the Lateran or in St. Peter's, or take that back, he leaves to go back to Argentina to say, hey, we're going to have the papacy here and in Rome, and it just goes kaput. There's just people are getting killed in the middle of the street. Blood is literally on the streets, and there's sheep and other animals grazing in the basilicas while they're falling down to the ground, being desecrated and things like that. You think the news would cover that in a or like the Diocese of Chicago and Cincinnati spinning their ideas of we're getting rid of 70% or 100 churches and calling this a good thing. We're becoming more missionary. So say Francis leaves and Rome just goes to in a handbasket. Yeah, just a thought. Would it be okay? Would you be okay? Not having any anxiety. I think you would be a little bit upset about what's going on. Let me see if I get the screen share up for that. Windows capture photo. Is that it? That's not coming up. Okay. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you can't see it, and you won't be able to see it. If you're listening on the radio, you won't be able to see it anyway. So I'll just read it. It's Frank Sheed. In the criticisms uttered by many, this is from his book. What is the name of that book? You might want to get it one day. Christ in the Eclipse, or Christ in Eclipse. So Frank Sheed writes, in the criticisms uttered by many, there is a failure to see Christ as the whole point. So much in the daily running of the church they find depressing. The sermons, they say, take no one deeper into the reality of God or man. This priest or that cares for nothing but money. The sick are neglected, the old are rejected. The hierarchy know nothing of the emotional or intellectual problems which are eating away at their people's faith. The curia is simply a bureaucracy, using every trick to hold on to its power. As for the Pope, it all adds up to the institutional church, with so many wondering if their spiritual integrity will permit them to remain in it. But institutional Israel, the chosen people, as the prophets show, was even worse than the harshest critics think the Catholic Church. Yet it never occurred to the holiest of the Jews to leave it. They knew that however evil the administration behaved, Israel was still the people of God. So with the church, and administration is necessary if the church is to function. But Christ is the whole point of the functioning. We are not baptized into the hierarchy. We do not receive the cardinal sacramentally. We do not spend eternity in the beatific vision of the Pope. St. John Fisher could say in a public sermon, quote, if the Pope will not reform the curia, God will. A couple of years later, he laid his head on Henry VIII's block for papal supremacy, followed to the same block by St. Thomas More, who had spent his youth under the Borgia Pope Alexander VI, lived his early manhood under the Medici Pope Leo X, and died for papal supremacy under Clement VII, as time-serving a pope as Rome had had. Christ is the point. I myself admire the present pope, this time he was writing of Paul VI, but even if I criticized as harshly as some do, even if his successor proved to be as bad as some of those who had gone before him, even if I sometimes find the church, as I have to live in it, a pain in the neck, I should still say that nothing a pope could do or say would make me wish to leave the church, though I might well wish that he would. Israel, through its best periods as through its worst, preserved the truth of God's oneness in a world swarming with gods, and the sense of God's majesty in a world sick with its own pride. So with the church under the worst administration, say as bad as John the 12th, 1,000 years ago, we could still learn Christ's truth, still receive his life in the sacraments, still be in union with him to the limit of our willingness. And if you don't know John the 12th, that's the pornacracy. Literally, the Vatican was basically a porn hub. And I think he was found dead in the arms of his mistress. These guys, what do you think Peter Damian wrote the book on Sodom, the book of Sodom? It was on the clerics of his time who were sodomites. So this is, again, nothing new as one guy says, nothing new. It's just the actors are different. Nothing new than there's maybe electricity. Because you see the sins of today are the exact sins of yesteryear, except we have electricity and lights and strobe lights and maybe amplifiers for music, things like that. It's nothing different but the actors. It's nothing different but the clothing, the different styles. Nothing different than maybe they have cars now or not. Internet now versus the internet, they didn't have that. News travels faster than the speed of light versus news travel at the speed of a ship crossing the Atlantic that may or may not make it there because it got sunk by a storm or a tidal or a wave. So it goes back to uniformity of God's will. Get this book. You see how big it is. It's gigantic. I think it's like 30 pages. 10 books has it. Everyone should get one, maybe two, and hand it off to somebody. Confirming you're conforming your will to God's will. If God can tolerate this, why can't you? Why can't me? Why can't we? If God is asleep at the boat, we talk about you see the gospel about that. He will wake up and calm the waves. Do we trust in him or not? Do we say the gates of hell will not prevail against it? When God said that, do we trust in him or not? Do we believe his words or not? And if we do believe, then our anxiety levels should go way down. Like, okay, it's a bad, this got said today. Okay. It's on me, ownership, to learn the faith, to be in the faith. Salvation, when you go to Judgment Day, God ain't going to look at you. Hey, what's your excuses for not doing this? Was it the Pope? Okay, yeah, that's no big deal. No problem. We'll let you in because you're going to have to own up to everything. We'll get into that on the next side.
Hello, my name is Ray Haywood, and I'm coming to you today to speak to you about the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group, a men's group that was started under the leadership of Father Matthew Card by the intentional men of the parish of St. Thomas Aquinas here in our Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina. In our first efforts, we were asked if we would model our men's group in a way that other parishes could simply follow. With that intent in mind, we created the fsjjourneyman.com website. On that website, you can find all that is needed to create your own chapter of the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group in your parish, as well as resource documents that we are intentionally placing into our faith community. We hope that you will step closer to the path and to each other in the just model of St. Joseph as you consider creating your own chapter of the Fraternity of St. Joseph Men's Group.
Hello, my name is Father Mark Lawler. I'm the pastor of the parish of St. Therese in Mooresville, North Carolina. I've been a priest of the Diocese of Charlotte for the last 27 years. When I was a seminarian, almost 30 years ago, I began to write some of the stories of some of the experiences that I had as a seminarian and continued that as a priest. And in April of this year, I published a little book, a collection of these memoirs, basically my vocation story, some ministry stories, and a little family history or family experiences in there as well. So far, the response has been very positive, very humbling for me. The title of my book is Lessons and Stories from the Journey, Reflections from the Life of a Joyful Priest. If you're interested in obtaining a copy of this book, we have some copies here at St. Therese in Mooresville, but you can order it online as a paperback or as an ebook at Amazon.com. You can look under search Father Mark Lawler, Lawlor, or the title Lessons and Stories from the Journey, Reflections from the Life of a Joyful Priest. Thank you very much.
Experience the incredible story of the woman who Time magazine named the most influential Catholic woman in the United States. Born Rita Rizzo, the future mother Angelica grew up in a rough neighborhood in Canton, Ohio. young Rita experienced abandonment, rejection, and heartache, but God touched her through a woman named Rhoda Wise. Encounter this amazing woman at the Mother Angelica Museum. Plan your visit today at motherangelicamuseum.com.
Hey everybody, Bill Snyder here. I'm one of the co-hosts of The Remnant. It's a men's show on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network with my two friends, Ray Haywood and Stephen Thomas. We talk about some of the issues facing men today and how to fight back against a culture that hates authentic masculinity. You can listen to it on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network every single Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check it out.
So, welcome back. Steve coming in with Sensus Fidelium Hour. I forgot the name of the show for a sec. And here's the third part of this. I want to bring in ownership. Because again, when we finished the last segment with, when you come up to Judgment Day, it's going to be on you. And if you want to blame the bishop, you want to blame this priest, you want to blame the pope, you can blame everyone you want. Excuses are lies. It's on you to study the faith. I hear people always come up, but we need to have this, this parish or this priest because we need our children to learn the faith. Guess whose job that is? My kids. I'm looking at myself right now in the camera. That's on me. Come Judgment Day, it'll be on me. Come Judgment Day, it'll be on you for your kids. I have the Tradivox Catechism books right there. I have a bunch of, Council of Trent. Obviously, Council of Trent Catechism is made for priests, if you don't know. That was written for priests. It's these other catechisms. It's not saying that's not good to have. Get it, read it. But that's for priests. That was written for them. The other the Bellarmine Catechism, that was almost propagated for the entire church. It just didn't get there. But all these other catechisms, get them, read them, learn the faith, study them. It's on you to learn the faith. Don't be like your iPhone or whatever smartphone and try to hand out the what's the right word? Yeah, right now people give tell others to raise their kids daycare. You use the GPS on your phone instead of learning where to go. So now if your GPS doesn't work, you have no clue how to get where you're needing to go. We've basically taken all our mental capacities and given it to delegated it to other sources to do. Same thing with education and the faith. We're primary educators of our own family. It's on you to pull that out, to do that. What are you doing? Ownership. Here's Jocko talking about now. Leading up to this, he just got done. There was a thing in Iraq that happened. I think it was Iraq or Afghanistan. I think it was Iraq, where they ended up killing their own. It was friendly fire that took out some of their own. So he gets a letter back, and you can blame Father Nolan for this on me because he told us this in a men's group meeting back in Denver, Colorado, and it stuck with me, and I've been hammering it ever since. Bought all the books, read it, listened to most of all the podcasts, not all the 5-hour ones, but the clips where all the good stuff is to me. Anyway, listen to this. If you haven't listened, if you ever heard of this before, it's on the TED Talk back in 2017. So here we go.
Operation and what had gone wrong. Now, I knew what this meant. It meant that somebody had to pay. It meant that somebody had to be held accountable. It meant that somebody had to get fired for what had happened. So, I began to prepare my debrief. And in it, I detailed every mistake that was made and who made it. And I pointed out every failure in the planning and the preparation and the execution in the operation. And I pointed out who was responsible for that failure. There was plenty of blame to go around. There were so many people that I could incriminate with guilt. But something wasn't right. For some reason, I just couldn't put my finger on who was at fault and who specifically I should blame for what had happened. And I sat and I went over it again and again, and I struggled for an answer. And then when I was about 10 minutes from starting the debrief, that answer came, and it hit me like a slap in the face. And I realized that there was only one person to blame for the confusion, only one person to blame for the wounded men, and only one person to blame for the dead Iraqi soldier. And I knew exactly who that person was. And with that knowledge, I walked into the debriefing room with my commanding officer and the master chief and the investigating officer were sitting there waiting for me, along with the rest of my men, including my SEAL that had been wounded, who was sitting in the back of the room with his head and his face all bandaged up. And I stood up before them and I asked them one simple question. Whose fault was this? One of my SEALs raised his hand and he said, it was my fault. I didn't keep control of the Iraqi soldiers I was with, and they left their designated sector, and that was the root of all these problems. And I said, no, it wasn't your fault. And then another SEAL raised his hand and said, it was my fault. I didn't pass our location over the radio fast enough so no one knew what building we were in, and that's what caused all this confusion. It was my fault. And I said, no, it wasn't your fault either. And then another SEAL raised his hand and he said, boss, this was my fault. I didn't properly identify my target, and I shot and killed that friendly Iraqi soldier. This was my fault. And I said, no, this wasn't your fault either. And it wasn't yours or yours or yours, I said as I pointed to the rest of the SEALs in the room. And then I told them that there was only one person at fault for what had happened. There was only one person to blame. And that person was me. I am the commander. I am the senior man on the battlefield, and I am responsible for everything that happens.
Just to put my 2 cents in there, think about that for a minute. I am responsible for it. But the problem is me. G.K. Chesterton talks about that in his book, I think it's in one of his books. What is the problem with the Catholic Church? It's one of his essays. And he goes, me. And on top of that, what is your responsibility? As a father, as a leader of the house, it's on you. What is everything when you go into confessional? Me. It's on me. Whatever the sins, you don't go blaming other people in the confessional for your own sins. Go back to Jocko.
Everything. And then I went on to explain to them some new tactics, techniques, and procedures that we were going to implement to ensure that this kind of travesty never happened again. And I will tell you something. It hurt. It hurt my ego. It hurt my pride to take the blame. But I also knew that to maintain my integrity as a leader and as a man, I had to take responsibility. And in order to do that, I had to control my ego so that my ego did not control me. And you know what?
And this could be used for any walk of life. I mean, this clerics, laymen, whatever, you can work related. Anybody, this you can use it. You can make this what he's talking about into a Catholic thing across the board.
I didn't get fired. In fact, my commanding officer, who had expected excuses and finger pointing, when I took responsibility, when I took ownership, he now trusted me even more. And my men, they didn't lose respect for me. Instead, they realized that I would never shirk responsibility, and I would never pass that heavy burden of command down the chain and onto them. And you know what? They had the same attitude. Unlike a team where no one takes ownership of the problems, and therefore the problems never get solved with us. Everyone took ownership of their mistakes. Everyone took ownership of the problems. And when a team takes ownership of its problems, the problems get solved. And that is true on the battlefield, it is true in business, and it is true in life. So I say, take ownership. Take extreme ownership. Don't make excuses. Don't blame any other person or any other thing. Get control of your ego. Don't hide your delicate pride from the truth. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad. Take ownership of your mistakes, take ownership of your shortfalls, take ownership of your problems, and then take ownership of the solutions that will get those problems solved. Take ownership of your mission. Take ownership of your job, of your team, of your future, and take ownership of your life. And lead. Lead. Lead yourself and your team and the people in your life. Lead them all to victory.
Again, I see a lot of Catholic elements in what he says. Have a problem with your house? Hey, bad wife? You marry her. Take ownership of that. What are you going to do about it? Bad Pope? Hey, St. John Hughes says it's a part of God's judgment when he sends us bad priests. It's on us. We don't like hearing that it's our fault. We got to take ownership across the board on every level. Learning the liturgy, learning the faith, learning everything. And, the problems from the past 60 years, everyone needs to own up. Everybody needs to own up on what the problems are. And if we fix it, we can succeed. Anyways, next we'll head on to the commercial break right now.
Are you a man searching for the truth? Find answers and fellowship in the Carolina Catholic Man Cave every Saturday from noon until 7 p.m. only on the Carolina Catholic Media Network.
Carolina Catholic Parish News. St. Anne's is excited to announce their 26th annual carnival on Saturday, November 5th from 10 to 6 p.m. The carnival is St. Anne's primary fundraiser of the year. Buy Carnival's classic raffle tickets now at stanncarnivalraffle.org for your chance to win. The grand prize is $2,000. You need not be present to win. There will be lots of new attractions this year, including a Ferris wheel, a Grand Prix obstacle course, 24-inch accelerator slide, mechanical swings, games and rides for younger children, and so much more. There will be a bake sale and carnival food such as cotton candy, funnel cakes, burgers, and hot dogs too. So round up your family and head to St. Anne's to join in on the fun and festivities of the new and improved carnival. For the Carolina Catholic News, I'm Pam Cullen. God bless y'all.
Hello, Carolina Catholic Media family. This fall brings more new programs and ideas to grow your Carolina Catholic Media apostolate. You'll find all access to our local programs on air, online, and on demand, with nearly 1,000 audio podcasts and YouTube videos available in our vast library. You'll hear more local parish, school, and ministry news, plus big events being held throughout the fall. Be sure to ask about reserving a Carolina Catholic live broadcast for your event. We encourage you to get involved, come join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a one-time donation, a monthly pledge, a business sponsorship, or perhaps becoming a program underwriter. Every dollar supports our evangelization mission to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in the Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate. May God bless you abundantly.
Welcome back. It's Steve Cunningham with the Sensus Fidelium Hour. Again, let me go ahead for the final segment. Let's go ahead and start this off because I don't know how long it will take me to get my point across. But to wrap it up, this is part of one of Jocko's videos, a shorter version of it. Is I want peace for my kids, but he wasn't able to explain it in a previous one, so he explains it now. I'll show you what I'm talking about in the Catholic idea of this after he gets done.
And there were some comments about it that came out. And look, as I go through some of those comments on the YouTube channel, we can probably do some kind of an underground podcast about the comments and just kind of reflect on them and respond to some of them. And we could probably do that. We've talked about doing that with some of the other of our podcasts in the past, but there's a bunch of things, but there was one that I saw came up a bunch. So at some point, Jordan asked me if I wanted peace for my son. And for some reason, he focused on my son. I also have daughters as well. And I said, I thought about it for a second. I said, yes, I want there to be peace for my son. And whenever I said that, he started talking immediately, and I wasn't done yet. And I said, but, and he started talking. It's not like he was being rude. I saw some people let Jocko finish talking and don't look, you got to remember, a podcast is a conversation. That's what it is. And so when you're having a conversation, you think of something you want to say, you don't want to lose a thought. He thought of something and he started talking, and I didn't obviously make it clear that I had a little bit more to say, and so we moved on. But I did get that but in. Yeah. So people knew that there was more to the answer, and I just wanted to kind of expand on that just a little bit. So, of course, I want my kids, my son and my daughters, to have, and not just them, but my family and friends and people that I know. I want people to have peace and prosperity. Of course, right? That's kind of obvious. But I also know that I want them also to have struggle. I want them to face adversity. Right? I think that is also very obvious. And I think there's some people that in the comments said the but was what he wanted to say. And that's kind of true too. Right? It's such a big but that I didn't really need to say anything else. So there was that aspect to it too. But look, if you have everything easy in life, you just get soft and weak. Right? I mean, why not have your kids in an isolated, insulated, reinforced concrete bunker with filtered air and a supply of food and water and padded walls where nothing can ever happen to them, right? Because that's what you do. And you actually put them on a calorie restrictive diet, so that's the maximum lifespan and all that stuff. If that's what we're going to do, what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with someone they live for a long time, but do they really live? Do they really live? That's the question. So, yeah, I want everyone to have peace, but at the same time, I think that struggle is good. I think that struggle makes better people. Adversity makes you tougher. And that's what the but was about. It goes back to something I said to Sam Harris about combat and cancer. I had said that he was saying, you say that wait, that wasn't a very good Sam Harris impersonation, was it?
No.
He said, Jocko, you say that combat is horrible, but at the same time, you also have said.
You can check it out on your own. And just type in I want peace, but on the Jocko podcast. And but yeah, I mean, think about that. You want adversity because iron sharpens iron, what we talked about in the first segment. If you have problems, you have something coming up to you, especially like some work, how you get stronger. You break down them. You put stress on your muscles. You break them down to build them back up. You need rest, food, obviously nutrition. That's got to be good to end up coming back. You need sleep. You need these things to be able to get bigger. You get stronger in the faith, the spiritual warfare. We're called the church militant. We're not the church lazy boy. You're going to be church militant. You're struggling on earth, to end up gaining virtue. How do you gain virtue? You gain virtue because you have to develop against vice. Just like if you hear about the guys in the past, that there was this one, I can't remember his name, he castrated himself so he wouldn't have the temptation. Well, does that build virtue? That's the easy way out, and you gain no virtue out of it. Just like if you get everything handed to you, are you hungry for that down the road? No. It's those guys that are brought up in the first in one of my podcasts I mentioned. I want the guy that is like one of those that when the lights go off at the gym, he's staying after running the hills, running stairs, practicing on his own, going out to the batting cage late at night, doing the extra. There's I don't know if you saw that about the Oakland Athletics backup catcher, ended up in his last game, had his kids announce him, and as his last at bat, he hits a home run. And he's jumping around the bases, joy coming out from. If he didn't work as hard as he did, would that be as great ending for him as it would? There was a guy on social media that compared it to saying this guy was a backup catcher in his last game. He's still doing pregame drills in a game he ain't catching in, taking blocking practice. And another guy who's making $100 million this year didn't show up for a Friday workout. Who wanted it more? Do you want it? It's that whole thing from League of Their Own. It's supposed to be hard. The tough makes it great. If it was easy, everyone would do it. Again, if it was easy, everybody would be Catholic too. But if it was easy, everybody would be a saint too. Well, in a sense, it is easy. You got to do it. You have to will it. St. Thomas Aquinas, when his sister asked how you become a saint, he said, will it. Again, will it. What do you will? Is it all about let's make it easy, let's make it cush? Let's if there's a problem, if there's any kind of argument, there's any kind of adversary going on that you don't want to, you just want to sit back and do nothing. You want to just take the easy way out. You want to let's shortchange it. Do you want to take the halfway approach to things? Or are you willing to put the time and effort into learning the faith? So that means when the family's going down, are you going to turn on the TV to watch some stupid show that your mind just blanks out on? Or are you going to read a couple books that maybe something you don't know of, history of the church, understanding theology a little bit more, the scripture once, read a chapter a day, whatever. Or you want to, it's a sloth idea. It's do you want to try to take the nap? As Jaco brings up before, he goes, what's your first conquest of the day? And many priests will talk about this in sermons I have on the channel, is not to hit that alarm clock. That alarm clock goes off, you get up, you conquer right off the bat. And then you get up, do your morning prayers, work out, and you're already on the victory path for the day. You're not snoozing. All right. Say the alarm goes off at 6, now you're not getting up to 6:30, maybe you're not getting up to 7. You've just delayed the whole time. Now you're sluggish getting up. You're not as active. You missed out on a workout maybe. Now you're maybe eating donuts. Now you're eating stuff that isn't good for you, things like that. Because if you did get up and you had the discipline to do this and that and go work out, now you go to the office and maybe there's a free box of donuts sitting there and you just say, you know what? I just got up early. I spent an hour at the gym, busted my tail there. I'm not eating poison. I'm not eating something that's going to go against my what my body should be having right now. You're going to think of the discipline to not do it. And you read that in Climacus and others of like monks not having snacks in between meals. Or fasting, when you have a fast, and be able to say no to that. If you can't say no to these little things, how are you going to say no to the bigger things? People want to do, I want to get martyred, I want to do this, but you can't say no to a Twinkie. So if these little things add up, bigger practice, build up, workout-wise, you go from less weight to a heavier weight down the road because you build up to it. Same will in theology. It's not something you just sit there and in the Matrix they stick it on the back of your head and upload everything. You got to work for it. You got to work for knowledge. You got to work. Praying just doesn't come easy. You got to practice that. You got to pray better. You say, hey, please, dear Lord, help me to pray better. helped me to practice being at focus better on mass, mortification, penance, the little thing, the little pebble in your shoe that nobody knows about. Now, one little thing equals bigger things. There's a line in the movie For the Love of the Game when the catcher gets drunk off a bunch of mini bottles, and his excuse to Kevin Costner's character is it was just a few mini bottles, and Costner's character goes, well, a bunch of mini bottles equal to a big bottle. So a bunch of little things equal up to a bigger thing. So if you want to go like, I'm going to do this huge thing, monumentous thing, but you can't do the smaller ones, you're going to fail, get discouraged, and quit. So you build up to it, it goes small to big, and then when you get to the bigger ones, then you can conquer it because you got the smaller ones under your belt. You can work, your body's ready for it, your mind's mentally ready for it, and then you can conquer the bigger deals. Because if you see the icon right over here, if you're looking on the screen, it's the icon of the 40 Martyrs of Sebaste. They were 40 guys that got sent on top of a cold, frozen pond. Think about now, it's getting colder outside. Go outside when it's 30 degrees, barefooted if you have a outdoor patio or something, that thing gets cold. Think of these guys, pointing to the icon. They're standing on a frozen pond all night long. And you see the guy right here, and if you look at the icon, there's a guy entering a bath. And what they did is they took a hot tub, basically, or sauna in their ways, and teased them with it. One guy ended up taking the bait and went in, but one of the generals that were persecuting these guys saw the faith, saw crowns coming down on him, and goes, I need to be a part of this, and took his place. So, and these guys didn't just come out of the woodwork and go, you know what, we can do this. We can stand on ice for all night and all day the next day. They had to build up to get there. Because go outside and try it. It might get a little too cold for you. It does for me. I always wonder about when it gets too cold if I could, how do these guys do it? Because I can't do it yet. Anyways, y'all have a great rest of the week. This is Steve Cunningham with Sensus Fidelium Hour. Keep the joy. 3 cheers for joy. God love you.